Hey everyone, this is Jonathan from EthStaker. Welcome to Community Call 61. This is the first community call of 2026, so we're excited to get back on the stream and share some new things that we've been working on. And yeah, the topic of this call is this new staker console tool. So we have we have Valefar with us, the who led building this new tool, and he can go into more detail about what it is. But I mean, just in overall, it's a successor and building upon the staking launchpad that we all know and love, and has been around for many years now since the Beacon chain launched. Um, and so being able to do things with the Beacon chain smart contract. So the intent of this community call is to share this in a live way, um, tell the story of it, demo it, have Valfar um, share his story and what was built here and demo it, and also any questions and answers as we always do on community calls. So I think that's my little intro that will set this up. Valfar is here on the stream with us, and we really appreciate you taking some time to share this tool and what it can be for people. Because it definitely looks and feels different, but some things are probably going to look and feel like familiar as well, like actions that um, you've done before. So I'm excited to see this too, seeing it in action. So Valfar, I can at this point hand you the mic and you can introduce yourself and take it from there.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was my pleasure building this tool. Hello everybody. I'm Valefar. I joined EthStaker about 3 years ago when I needed help with updating my withdrawal credentials. And with that process, I became well versed in those operations and found myself equipped to help others and found that really rewarding. Um, I mean, my favorite thing about the EthStaker community is the saying knowledgeable second, welcoming first, just the other way. And I think a lot of other communities could benefit from that, at least especially like crypto Twitter. But anyway, so what we built is, as I said, is the EthStaker console. So let me kind of share my screen here, make sure this still works. Everyone should be able to see that, yes?
Yep.
Great, let me get this out of the way. Excellent. Yeah, so I would just like to start with explaining the genesis of why we built this. So hopefully people are aware, but about a year ago, EthStaker completed the audit of the EthStaker deposit console, which is the EthStaker deposit CLI, which was the fork of Ethereum's staking deposit CLI. After that was completed, we pretty much set our sights on Launchpad because both of those applications were in a pretty similar situation. The staking deposit CLI was consciously ossified to prevent needing audits. So when it came to like any sort of logic around the mnemonic, they didn't want to touch it, whereas there were features we wanted to add. So we forked it. With Launchpad, we are able to do features as we did with Pectra. Hopefully everyone is aware of that. But when it comes to more long-standing concerns around the user experience, that's a little bit more difficult because, to be honest, the dependencies are like 5 years out of date. So instead of forking that, we just did a full rewrite and try to resolve those UX concerns. And before I get into the demo, I just want to say, like, no one should blame the EF for this. Both of those tools were built as a stopgap solution. They were never meant for long-term use. The hope was that other communities would come in, build better products, and then people would migrate to those products. So I would bet it took a little bit longer than they would have liked, but here we are. So the current instance that we have right now is Hoodi only. So we have a separate domain, which is on hoodi.console.ethstaker.org. When we do deploy mainnet, it will be on a separate domain, very similar to how Launchpad works. But when you enter the application, the very first thing you're asked to do is just connect your wallet. And so if you connect your wallet, hopefully people are aware of this tool, but this is called Reown AppKit, which is something I use professionally, and I'm a huge fan of. It just checks most of the boxes that needs to be checked natively. It has a lot of innate wallet support, and then on top of that, it has Wallet Connect. Wallet Connect is a great solution for, let's say, nuanced situations. A perfect example of this would be like a safe multi-sig wallet. which I know a lot of people had difficulty with on the launchpad. As a wallet connect allows for that type of utility. But for this instance, we're just going to connect to MetaMask. And there we go. And you can see that you're immediately sent to a dashboard and with validators auto-discovered. And the way this is done is we just grab validators with matching a withdrawal address. This is the address of the connected wallet. Any validator that has the withdrawal address that matches will discover. So looking at this, I want to make sure it's very clear what this tool is not. This tool is not going to be a replacement for performance monitoring. That is not at all what the tool is for. It is to perform operations on the execution layer that validators may need to execute. And we have them defined over here. So we have deposit, top up, upgrade, consolidate, withdraw, and exit. And there's three main smart contracts that each of these represent: the deposit contract, the consolidate, and withdraw smart contracts. But yeah. And the other thing I would like to explain is how we're getting this data. So the tool that I built is currently open source on Staker Console with the EthStaker repository. Excuse me, the repository is called Staker Console. And it is a very simple, I think it's pronounced Vite, Vite React TypeScript front end. And for the back end, we're using another open source project written by Patches, who thank you very much, Patches, for all the help you gave. It was outstanding. And this is an incredibly lightweight Go library where you just point to your beacon node and you're all set. There's no databases involved, so it's incredibly lightweight, which has pros and cons. One of the pros is that anybody can spin this up if you would like, among others. And then a con is, which we'll see, is all of these operations start on the execution layer, but we only have visibility to the beacon layer. So there's going to be a slight delay for some operations and a little bit larger delay for others, which we will see. But I hope that is not going to be a massive problem for people. But why don't we get started with the operations? The first two are going to take a little bit because there's a lot of explaining to do, and then the other operations should go much quicker. But we'll start with the deposit, everybody's favorite. And right off the bat, you're asked to just upload your deposit data. This is probably going to be quite alarming to people who use Launchpad because the educational barrier has been kind of removed. So having to cycle through all those checkboxes kind of got rid of all that. And instead, we have a guide which exists for pretty much every operation that explains what you need to do. So here it would pretty much describes how to perform or how to create the deposit file using the ever so loved EthStaker deposit CLI as an example. So I already have a file generated, and this contains 10 validators. So this is going to be exciting for some people because one of the problems people had was the all or nothing approach that Launchpad did. So we removed that because it's a very common use case, and I did it myself, where instead of having to go find your mnemonic and generate a deposit file for every validator you may want to deposit to, you create a single large deposit data file and then kind of strip away the ones you need at the time you need them. And manually manipulating that deposit data file could result in errors such as the trailing comma concern, which was pretty common. But for this instance, what we're going to do is we're just going to deposit to 4 of these for now. So we'll just click on the ones that we want, and then 4 times 32 is indeed 128. Click deposit, and then you're met with the confirmation. So we'll have a confirmation modal for every single operation you make, just being like, hey, this is what we intend to do. Make sure everything looks correct. So here we can see at the top the connected wallet, the address, what the current balance is, what the balance will be after the operation, excluding fees. We're not doing any fee calculations. And then the validators you wish to deposit. So here we have A899D and A89D, A89D, A89D. There it is. That took a second. And then the only checkbox you have to click is that you understand the risks. So upon clicking that, this is going to show 2 exciting features. So we'll prepare for the signature. So the first is this is batched, which I hope is going to be a gem for everybody. So we're making use of a smart contract called multi-call 3. And the way this works is we give it a list of transactions that we want it to execute on our behalf. So we provide the entire balance of all of the deposits at once. And then the data will contain an item for every single deposit that we wish to make, or every single action we would wish to make. And the first parameter is going to be the address we intend to call, the ever so loved 705 FA deposit address. And so we're going to see 4 items here: item 1, item 2, item 3, and finally item 4. And so now we're going to sign this transaction. And now we're going to wait for the confirmation. While this confirmation is waiting, we're going to show this other little thing down here. So as I was mentioning with the manipulation of the deposit files, if you want, you don't need to do that anymore. You can click this button and it'll grab all validators you did not deposit to, and then provide that as a file. And so here it should contain 6 entries, 0 through 5. And then you can store this and use it at a later date without having to manipulate the file, which is, I think, pretty cool. And so now I was mentioning, we have a little thing here that says it's going to take a few minutes to reach the beacon chain. Specifically with deposits, it's going to take a hot minute. So we're going to click finish, and the first thing you're going to ask is, well, where are my validators? The way we're grabbing the validators is by looking at the beacon chain validators object. So until the deposited validators get registered, which can, like I said, take a minute, we basically just lose focus of them. But before this demo is over, we should see them. So it just takes a few minutes, but I'm not going to sit here and wait for them to exist. So instead, we're going to move on to, let's do an upgrade. So an upgrade is where you convert a validator from 0x01 to 0x02. Now, for most people, having this in any sort of batch manner doesn't really make sense. But for large providers, it absolutely will be. If they want to have that functionality, we allow it. So we're going to upgrade just 3 of these for now. And this is just the 0x01 validators that we had in the dashboard. We're going to click upgrade. Again, we have the confirmation modal, which shows the validation we wish to upgrade, a checkbox, making sure we understand what's going on, and then the transaction signature. So this is going to be a little frustrating to people, and I apologize, but we do not have full batch support for consolidations or withdrawals. Instead, we have like a queuing mechanism where it'll go through each transaction synchronously. So, for example, here we're using the consolidate smart contract. We have the queue amount, which is a trivially small value. If the queue is empty, it is 1 way, which is the smallest denomination of an ether. It is trivially very, very small number. And if the queue becomes quite large, we will provide warnings. But I've never seen anything material here. And then we have the deposit data, which should be the same validator key twice. 97 FCC. We're down here, 97 FCC. So we're going to confirm that. And similar to the last one, we wait for the confirmation to complete, and then it will automatically move on to the next transaction. So the way it would work if you had a ledger is you would click confirm, click, 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 click on the ledger. It would then sign, then you wait for the confirmation, and then you move on to the next one. And it just takes a moment for this little process to complete. Sometimes a little bit more than a moment.
I think one thing I would call out here too is like this design change around more things being combined, like batched, and less of those like clicking through on the website. I think that's just, I think
Mhm.
something I'm looking forward to having, because it's the previous Launchpad was like a lot of those like checkboxes, because I think it was like when this was new, they want, I think it was like you want to have all of these assurances that you're not aware of what you're doing. But this is kind of almost for like a staker that's, well, you could do it as a new staker. Certainly you could use this tool, but it's also for someone that wants to return and like do some of these actions that are like you've been staking for a while, and you've got the user guide as a reference. But I think it's just nice to have this built with that design philosophy in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll add to that in a second, but let me show one thing that I'm also very excited about is error handling. So if we were to cancel this transaction, that would be considered a failure. And when a transaction fails, for whatever reason, we will provide the error details. So if you're performing any of these operations and something happens like this and you just don't know what happens, in this case, it's pretty obvious. User rejected a request, so that's helpful. You can provide this information to anybody who can help you. And there's nothing here that would result in the loss of funds. I mean, this is all public data. It's an unsigned transaction. It's not going to be a problem. And then if it does fail, you can always just retry. And then it pops up again. And then if you really don't want to perform the action, you can always skip it. And then we can finish. So instead of upgrading all three, we only upgraded two. So now we're going to finish. And let me do a little refresh just in case. No, okay, so it didn't automatically refresh there. I'll fix that. But you can see here that we've already updated the two validators that we wish to upgrade. And so to tag on to what Jonathan was saying, the educational barrier that I called it, I think was absolutely necessary at the time, 5 years ago. But the cohort that I care the most about is solo stakers. And I personally, I think, we've seen the majority at this point. Until there's massive reduction in hardware requirement and probably financial requirement, I don't think we're going to be seeing a large influx. I would love to. And if we do, and that educational material is required again, I'll be more than happy to add it in. But I think what we've been seeing as solo stakers kind of trickle in, they end up in the Discord and they're asking questions there, and we try to be as helpful as possible.
I'd like to interject there as well, because like initially, the launchpad was like the main front of like staking throughout the web, but now we have a lot of different good resources as well, right? And at the time, education was more of a need, and I believe these days, there's a lot of good resources around and a lot of good references that people can use. And you got a bunch of those linked on the tool there. And so I believe the need is less present.
Yeah, I agree. But so there we saw that when it does take just a brief moment for those operations to materialize in the dashboard. And again, it's because of the delay between the execution layer getting to the beacon chain. But it is relatively quick, especially if the queue is empty, which on Hoodi it pretty much is. So now that we've upgraded, what I would like to do now is I apologize. I want to explain why we do not have batch support. So this is going to be a little on the technical side, so I apologize if people are not that interested, but I think it is important. So why do we not have batch support for those contracts? Let's go into it. So what we just did on the upgrade was we performed two actions, successfully of this exact interaction. We, as the sender, called the consolidate smart contract, and the consolidate smart contract has every smart contract has a variable called message.sender, which is the address of the sender, which would make sense. The reason why this is critical is this address is used to validate the action. So when you perform an upgrade, consolidate, withdraw, exit, the validator that you are operating on, the withdrawal credentials, the withdrawal address, needs to match this value. If the message sender does not match the withdrawal address of the validator you're operating on, it fails. It is not allowed. This is how they're authenticating on the execution layer, which is really, really cool. The way they previously authenticated actions, such as an exit, was through the validator key, which obviously makes sense, and of course through mnemonic. But they basically said, well, hey, the validator key is one way. We can use the execution address as well, which is why upgrading from 000 is so critical. And I hope people are still able to do that. Hopefully people lost their mnemonic. I've hopefully found it. It's always a sad situation. But yeah, anyway. But what was going on with deposit was we were using a batch contract. And the way this works is we, as the sender, call the batch contract and say, hey, perform these transactions. And then it calls the contract. So we call the batch contract in the deposit case calls the deposit smart contract. Now, what that contract sees is not the original sender, but the address of the batch contract. Now, if we were to attempt to do this with consolidations or withdrawals, it is very, very, very unlikely that the address is going to match the withdrawal address. And so this this fails. This doesn't work. There are two ways I can see to get around this. One is to basically rewrite the consolidate and withdrawal smart contract with batch support, which I think is a little spooky. Would require multiple audits, and I do not have the expertise to even touch that. The other approach is what is called EIP 7702. Let me kind of show you how that works. EIP 7702 allows an address to sort of mimic a smart contract. What you do is, as a sender, you make an authentication request with a smart contract you wish to perform operations. So, for example, with the batch contract, it has this really cool batch method. It's like, hey, I want to use that. Give me the code. I'm going to add it to my address, and I'm going to be able to call that code directly. And what this does is it circumvents the original contract, allowing the withdrawal or consolidate smart contract to see the proper address that we care about. The original sender is maintained. And this works. This works perfectly. And if you want to hear more about EIP 7702, there's EIP7702.io if you're more interested in a deeper dive. And so the question is, well, if this works, and I mean, like, why aren't we using it? And the reason why is if you go on like X and look up EIP 7702, you are going to see two primary threads. One is going to be about the security concerns, which are valid, but I'm not going to go into. And the other is the near complete lack of support. The only wallet that I'm aware that supports this on mainnet is MetaMask. I think there are a couple of others, but other heavy hitters like Rabby do not, which is a little frustrating. But the other problem is on Hoodi, as far as I can tell, there is zero support. And when it comes to, cryptocurrency feature development, I'm pretty adamant that unless I test it myself, I'm not going to release it. When it comes to this type of operations, it is relatively simple, and the cost of failure is minimal. But I don't really care about that. I care about making sure whatever I provide to people has been thoroughly tested and will work every time. And so there's three ways to implement this. One is wait for Hoodi support, which is the process I'm currently taking. The second is if somebody wants to be my mainnet guinea pig, we can do that, but I would strongly not recommend that. And there is a third approach, which is, believe it or not, Sepolia has EIP 7702 support, but alas, that is a permissioned validator set where I am not permissioned. So if I were able to get Sepolia validators, I would then be able to test this out. But at this point, kind of just in a holding period until there is Hoodi support. I am watching and waiting, but still yet to exist. So until that, yeah, I'm sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, so we were like saying, hey, while it's support 7702, right? That would be a great outcome for people to build that in and adopt it. I mean, and this is, I guess I was going to, the point I want to make also is that 7702 is one of those big features that came in Pectra. And a big theme of this tool, and I think what there's a lot of opportunity out there for developing, is things that take advantage of those Pectra features. So we're like ready to use it. Valefar here that's a great explanation of how this could be used right away, I think. So yeah, that's a really interesting explanation. And I think a good theme here about just what this is taking advantage of and could even more so.
Yeah, thank you. And like again, we can, it does work on mainnet MetaMask. And then it's very easy to fall back to this huge batch support. But again, I'm just not going to, and it might be frustrating to some people, especially large validators who may want to use that feature. But again, I've been working in like crypto security for a decade. It's ingrained in me not to mess around with that type of stuff, and I hope people can appreciate that. So that was deposit and top up, and I promised that would take the lion's share. So now I'm going to move through the next four relatively quickly. So now let's do a quick top up. Yeah, there we go. And so with top ups, you can see that a couple of these are grayed out, in my opinion, because the top up, it requires a minimum of 1 ETH. I don't think it makes sense to top up like a validator that's already at the max EB. If there's an argument against it, I'd love to hear it, but I don't think it makes sense. So I gray them out. But we'll deposit to, let's just do like, I have plenty of things. Let's just do a top up to these two. And again, because this uses the deposit smart contract, it's going to be batch. And then again, if you wanted to understand what a top up is, we have that little modal available. So we'll do the top up. This looks very similar to the deposit, just different values, because that's really what we're doing. We're performing a deposit just with different values and to validators that already exist. So we're going to go through this relatively quickly. We're going to queue up the transaction to get signed. That took a little bit longer to kind of spook me. Again, we're using the multi-call 3 smart contract with the 2 items that we would expect. Click confirm. And then we wait for a moment. Waiting periods on Hoodi is a little bit longer because I think of the, and I'm guilty of this, is there's a lot of inactive validators. But anyway, and then then also, yeah, if you wanted to see the transaction, you can always click on that, and there it is. And yeah, Etherscan still hasn't picked it up at any moment now. Then we'll finish, and look at that. So that brief period, they got registered on the beacon chain. We now have them as pending changes. If we were to click on this, it will go to my personal favorite website next to Forecast, Petrified. So Petrified has 2 instances, one for Hoodi and one for Mainnet. And if you haven't heard of this tool, you're missing out, because if you scroll down to the bottom, it's missing. So they haven't picked it up yet. So we picked it up faster. I'm going to come back to that. I thought I was going to be there immediately, but there should be a pending result here. Well, we'll come back to that. I'm guarantee it's going to be there. So we've done those 3. So let's do a withdraw, which is the opposite. So there's just a slight bug here where you shouldn't be able to withdraw from a 0x01 validator. I will fix it. I have it written down. Don't worry. But we'll. And also, you can't withdraw below an effective balance, because the maximum you can withdraw is up to the minimum effective balance, which is 32, or you would be performing an exit. That's why these are not available, because there's not enough of a balance. And so we'll do a withdrawal of this one. Let's do 50 and 90, get my money back. We'll withdraw. This is going to, here we have the current balance of your wallet. Here's what it's going to be after everything's all said and done. Got our little checkbox here, sign. And again, pseudo batch support. But in this case, we're calling the contract directly. And if anybody's interested, the value here is we have the public key of the validator we're operating on, and then the hex value of the GUI amount. So if you ever wanted to make sure you're doing everything correctly, you can just be like, okay, is this my public key? B44C12, B44C12. You should always verify that these values match. Confirm. Takes a second. Let me refresh this, see if it's there. Still isn't there. Interesting. And we'll have the next one queues up. Confirm.
Is this something that can only be seen on Petrified? Like,
that's the only tool I'm aware of. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
We've really enjoyed what that website has put together. I think that's a really good call
I
out.
believe it might still be possible to see these on Beacon Chain too.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's.
So if you have a look on the Beacon Chain on the Hoodi, you might be able to see it as well.
It was there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But does it give an estimation?
That's a good question. I'm not sure about the details that you get.
I think this might be the estimation then right here. I wasn't aware of that. That's very cool. And as you can see, don't be mad, but yeah, my validator is not active. My Hoodi node broke. Anyway, we were in the process. There we go. So now we have a withdrawal, and then we can see that we have that same type of experience. And then here you can see the total pending changes across your validator set. Let me see if this one. There we go. So now, and then here is the pending view. So we can see here the ETA of a day and 3 hours before the funds will exist, before the funds will be retrieved. We're down to 2 more, consolidate and exit. So let's do a consolidate. But before I do that, I would like to show off one little feature. A common complaint that people had was the inability to operate on validators that were not linked to the connected wallet. This is not my validator. So I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to grab the public key, then going to search for that public key on the dashboard, and it finds it. So this is the validator that we were just looking at. I do not control this validator. Clearly, this is online. But there are operations that you can perform. We can top up and consolidate. Because when it comes to a consolidate, the target validator can be any 0x02 validator. So you have to be very, very careful. The source validators are the ones that need to match the connected wallet. So that's an option. So you can perform you can initiate the operation from here, or if you go to consolidate, the very first thing you have to do is select that target validator. And upon selecting, it will filter the list to what 0x02 validators you control. But again, you can search for any public key and it will discover that validator that you can select. And then we have this warning spread across the experience to make sure, like, hey, that's not associated with your connected wallet. Please be careful.
Because this is essentially sending money to potentially someone else, right?
Exactly. You're being very generous, unless it's your validator, in which there we go. So we will perform this operation. And so again, we're going to be like, hey, a little caution there. And then we have the validators that we can consolidate. So I'm going to choose this one for a very specific reason. So we can see here that we have 2 columns, one for the balance swept and one for the balance added to the target. This is a very common question that comes up, is like, why did I not receive all my funds? And the reason why is when you perform a consolidation, the funds that get sent to the target is the effective balance or the total balance, whichever is smaller. So in this case, the effective balance of this validator is 309. That's what's going to be sent to the target. The remaining balance is going to be swept. And the swept balance is pretty much identical to how it worked with 0x01. We have that sweep cycle, which iterates through each of the validator indices one at a time. And then any balance over 32 would be swept to your withdrawal address. It's the exact same thing here. The 309 will be after the consolidation has completed and you've gone through the exit queue, you are immediately sent the 309 to the target address. But the remaining balance then has to wait for that sweep cycle. There's technically going to be, in this instance, there's going to be two, well, it's not really a transaction to the target, but we'll call it a pseudo transaction to the target, and then the actual transaction to your withdrawal address. Now, in this case, this validator here has a total balance of 301.9, but its effective balance is 32. So in this case, the total amount gets sent. So hopefully that makes sense, because that was a common question that quite a few people had. So we'll perform this operation, and again, here we go. Make sure you understand that this is not your wallet. And then again, we even have an additional checkbox to be like, hey, you acknowledge this target validator is not associated. If you don't know who this validator is, you will lose your money. But then we explain, like, this is the current balance of the validator. This is the amount that's going to be added, the amount that's going to be swept, and at the bottom here we have the new total balance, which is just these 2 values added up. So we'll do this. We'll pair the transaction, and again, it's going to be queued. So here we interact with the address directly. The amount, again, has nothing to do with the amount of the validator. It's all associated with the current queue of the consolidate smart contract, which again is 0. And here we have the data. So the way this data works is the first address is the source, and the second is the target. Confirm.
While we
It's
are
just
waiting, I just want to say that we have a few questions on the YouTube chat, which I'll be asking towards the end.
and then we'll which one was this? This was 3. This was the other one. I'm gonna cancel this one. And we'll just skip it. Yeah. Excellent. And so again, it's going to take a brief moment, and while we wait, we will do an exit. And this is the last thing, and then we should be pretty much wrapping up. I kind of lost sight of what validators I'm working with here, but so with an exit, it is an incredibly permanent operation, and you can make the argument that a consolidation is as well. So we have a text box instead, just making sure you understand that, like, hey, this is going to exit your validators. And then again, we have the connected wallet, the current balance, what the balance will be after the operation is fully complete, and then the balances of those validators we wish to exit. So we'll sign that. And again, it's queued because there are 2 separate actions. I know how frustrating that can be, especially because I heard horror stories about people having to operate on hundreds of validators, and consolidating and doing it one at a time, and it can literally take days. I do think this queuing system will drastically reduce that time, but it's still not where we want to be. But again, we are kind of slightly blocked. A little refresh here. Okay. Still haven't gotten those validator deposits, which is a little frustrating. I was expecting them to be there by now. Let me think if there's anything else I'd like to go over. Oh, yes, I do. So as we were talking about, we have some links at the bottom here. So we have documentation that links to EthStaker's knowledge base. If you have any questions, you can always look at that. We have solo staker guides, which we kind of already talked about. We have the support. So if you need any issues, you can always go to the EthStaker Discord. We try to be as available as possible. And then if you have any issues, you can contact the team directly on the EthStaker Discord, or me specifically, or you can create a GitHub issue and I will resolve immediately. And the last thing I would like to show is, when it comes to maintaining this repository, the problem that we had with Launchpad was the dependencies getting out of date for multiple years. Oh, there's systems now that can trivialize this process. So one of the things that I'm making sure to do is keeping our dependencies as up to date as humanly possible. So that issue should not be a problem. So hopefully this tool can exist just fine and be updated as needed for years to come. There we go. And so now we have, and so those were I believe those were the exits. And so here we can see those 2 validators are now being exited. Excellent. I think if there's, happy to go over any other details, but I think that's pretty much it. The only question is where those deposits go, but yeah, that's it. Hopefully people find that helpful.
Yeah, this has been really thorough. I think we do have some questions, and yeah, very great explanations of how this works, though, and really cool to see it live in all the different ways you did. Hanny, do you want to ask your question? I know there's also some on the YouTube chat, so maybe, do you want to start, Hanny?
Yeah. So with the increase in front end attacks, is there ways to either view versioning of the site and maybe with like a date it was last updated, as well as how would somebody run this locally if they wanted to?
Yeah, with versioning, I don't have a version available right now in display, but I should add that. Let me write that down. There's no reason not to have that. I have a list here of bugs and issues I need to resolve. And then your other question was in regards to the ease of executing this project yourself. Let me kind of go through what's required. So the first thing you need to do is you need to have the EthStaker console repository cloned. We have instructions on how to do this. Git clone right there. And the requirements are running on node v20 or more. And then the only additional thing is, because we're using Reown AppKit, getting a project ID for Wallet Connect support would be required. And you can just go to their website to create a quick account and then grab that public ID. And then we have an environment variable file, which has the if you want Wallet Connect, we have one for the project ID of AppKit. And then there are 2 approaches you can make. For EthStaker's version, we're going to have separate domains for each instance. So for our Hoodi instance, we have a defined Hoodi API URL, which points to the deposit backend. So like if you run both of these locally, this can be like one to set localhost :8080. You would set that here. And then because we have a separate domain for mainnet, we're going to use the mainnet app URL instead. But if you wanted to have an instance with both chains directly, you could have both of these defined, and then the network selector will discover and handle accordingly. So if you have an app URL for mainnet, upon clicking on that mainnet, it will do a redirect. Whereas if you had both API URLs, it will just do a network switch, as you've probably experienced in many other applications. And then to quickly go over this is a Go library. So you have to, I would call it compile it, and then it'll have a command of deposit backend. The only required parameter is the beacon URL. So if you have a beacon node, probably on another machine, you could have like an SSHL connection to it, and then point this project, this application to that URL, and you're good to go. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah,
But that's it. That's it.
I love how packaged and simple you made that with instructions for everything.
Any other questions?
This is a
Yeah.
great segue to one of the other questions that was asked in the YouTube chat from Syntax Moon. He asked, "Is this available on Mainnet?" And maybe this is more a question for Jonathan or
Yeah.
Valefar. You guys can take it.
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I mean, so we made the choice to only do this on Hoodi for the first public release here, so that we could go through a security audit. And so we wanted to just, take a safe, conservative path here. And everything's out here. Everyone can kick the tires, look at the code and everything, but we're also working through that formal audit right now. And I guess I don't know if there's anything you would add, Valafar, about why that's a good idea or how people should think about that. But I mean, in all the announcements we've done, it's we're linking to the Hoodi version only. And in fact, I don't even think that the console.estaker.org URL will return anything right now. So there's no way you could like accidentally use this before the audit is complete. We'll keep that,
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said, but if I would like to show very briefly how quick it is to do this. So this is going to be a quick tech demo. So what I'm going to do is, let me see if I can do this really quickly. Yeah, I'm going to point my local instance to a mainnet, just kind of showcase how simple this is. 1 second. And then this can go here. There we go. So here we have the environment variable that I have. So my API URL is pointing to hoodies, and then I have now a local instance for my node environment, and this should work. 1 second. And I probably shouldn't have done this, but
So the idea being, if you want to do it on mainnet, you can do this.
Yeah. I can figure this out very quickly. There we go. Okay. So right now my beacon node is not accessible. You then point to your beacon node URL using this deposit backend, which should then create a instance on localhost 8080. And now that I have my API URL pointing to localhost 8080, I should be able to run this. I think it was localhost 301. Please work. And then we have Ethereum mainnet. And now this instance, I don't have any validators, but if I would go to beacon chain, oh, come on. There we go. Go to this individual, whoever you may be, and then search for, there it is. So this is mainnet. Oh, it didn't work. Ah, shoot. to too optimistic there. But this should be, yeah, this does point to this is pointing, but I'm not sure why that last step didn't work. Because we can see that we're pointing to this environment, or we're pointing to this same wallet, but nothing's being returned because there's no validators available. I'm not sure why that specific one didn't work though. But that's all it takes is you have you have a connection to your deposit node, your beacon node. You run this backend. You then have the front end have its environment variable pointing to it, and then you have the mainnet available. Ah, so close. Anyway, hopefully that was helpful and not a complete waste of time.
Yeah, I think that's definitely helpful. Like it's, this is open source code. You can take this and follow those steps if you're determined to use on mainnet. So I mean,
Mhm.
nothing's stopping you.
There's another
But
question from
yeah,
the YouTube chat, if you don't mind.
sure.
It's Callum to many. Ask when is the audit due to complete?
Yeah, I guess I can also take this one. There's no specific date um, identified yet. We're like fairly early in the process, but working through that actively, certainly right now. And so we will publish it whenever it's available and complete, and also make announcements just like we did for announcing this tool earlier this week that we did that. So yeah, no date to communicate right now, but we will share it. I mean, I think that this spring, if I wanted to give like a timeline, is pretty reasonable expectation. Was that all of our questions, Remy?
I
I think it
believe so,
looks like
yeah.
it. Okay. Um, well, cool. I don't know if there's any other questions here from those on the Zoom or YouTube. We have a minute or so. But yeah, go give it a try. It's exciting to have this, taking advantage of Pectra capabilities, and for stakers out there to do these new things and kind of have the full breadth of capabilities in the staker console. So have fun using it. And I thank you again, Valefar, for this in-depth overview and demo. This has been pretty enlightening. And
Before leaving, I just want to congratulate Valifar once more, because we've been waiting for so long for a good refresh update on the launchpad. And this is like such a great tool for everyone to use potentially in the upcoming years of staking.
Yeah, and the last thing I would like to say is what we can expect for the future of this tool. I forgot to go over that. So obviously there's a couple of bugs. I did figure out what happened with the mainnet instance, and it was just an API pointing to the wrong API, but I fixed that as well. There's three major things that I want to add. One is, of course, I'm monitoring EIP 7702 support. The other thing that I want to add is offline wallet support. And the way I would imagine doing that is, instead of connecting wallet, you can provide an address here, and then everything would be offline, where you would be ultimately given an unsigned transaction. So that's definitely something I would like to add as well. And then another feature I'm thinking about adding is a beacon chain message submitter. So if you still wanted to perform your exits on the beacon chain directly, having a little thing to submit those, I think would be pretty nice.
nice. Yeah, I guess that's a good call to action for people, is like if you play with this, use this, and you have feature ideas that you want to add to that list that Valifar just enumerated, please share them. Share them in Discord or as an issue on GitHub. There's probably various ideas out there that would be cool to hear about. So cool. Well, if there's anything else, but at this point, we could also give people listening the POAP.
Oh, yeah.
Would that be good, Remy?
Let me show the instructions. There you
Okay,
go.
cool. Okay, great. I see it. So here you go. Everyone listening, you can go collect this POAP for this community call 61. The directions haven't really changed from previous ones, but you send 0.001 ETH to the airship that's mentioned here. Just make sure you're going to the right address, and then it'll automatically populate in your POAP collection. And this will mint on Arbitrum, that supports and sponsors us in those in these POAPs for community calls and other events. So yeah, I think I would also just call out that you can pay that on Arbitrum One or Base Optimism or Ethereum mainnet. So enjoy. Thank you guys all for coming and for everyone here on this in the Zoom here for the discussion. Appreciate the overview. This will be a good thing to reference, I think, for anyone wanting to use the tool and learn about it, and just sharing what's been built here. So we really appreciate all the effort and the questions too for people asking away. So if there's anything else, I think we might be at closing time at this point. So thank you again, Valefar, and looking forward to seeing this get used and what feedback people have. Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
everybody.